This is the Miyoo Mini. It's my favorite retro handheld emulation device. Just look at this thing. It's a freaking little mini Game Boy. And guess what? Guess what, you guys? Onion OS, my favorite system for this thing, has just been updated. That's right, baby. Out with the old, in with the new. And that's what we're gonna check out today. Oh hey, hi there, I'm TechDweeb, how you doing? So yeah, we're back with the Miyoo Mini, which is not only my current favorite retro emulation handheld, it's actually one of my favorite things in the world. Sorry, Hermione. I play so much games on this thing. It basically lives in my cargo pocket. It's tiny, it has a beautiful screen, and it looks like a little mini Game Boy. How couldn't you love that? It's just a wonderful little object that brings me a ton of happiness and provides me with so much fun retro gaming, and I absolutely love it to bits. The operating system that I have on here right now is an older version of Onion OS. I made a video all about Onion OS. I'll include a link to that in the description below if you want to know about it or how to install it. I also made another video about a great simple operating system called Mini UI. Link to that in the description below as well. But today I'm excited because there's a new update for Onion. And I've heard about the new features and it sounds freaking awesome. Even better than before, if you can believe that. So let's check it out, shall we? As for the installation, okay, so here's the deal. Some things went wrong when I tried to update to the latest version of Onion. Because I already had a previous version of Onion installed, the guide made it sound super simple to update, but it did not go so smoothly for me. Mistakes were made. I'm gonna explain what I did, what went wrong, and what I'd suggest you do if you're in my situation, updating from an older version to a newer one. Long story short, the GitHub guide told me that I could install the new version over top of my old version. This is not true, not for me at least. Luckily, I backed up my SD card before trying anything. Basically, I had to update to the new firmware, and then I got stuck in a boot loop, and for a while I was pretty sure that I bricked my device. But I finally got the installer working, but then the installation didn't work the first time for whatever reason, so I installed it a second time, and of course I had to take a root beer break because the whole thing was stressing me out, and it seemed to work, but then a bunch of systems wouldn't launch the games, or they would crash, so I had to wipe the card clean and start fresh. That's the short version. I had to mess around a lot to get to that point, but in the end, just reinstalling everything from scratch was the only solution for me. So after all that, I'll tell you what I should have done right from the start, and this is what you should do if you're like me and you're updating from an earlier version of Onion. Step 1, back up your SD card. Just copy all the data off your SD card to a folder on your PC. Step 2, wipe the SD card clean. We're not gonna bother trying to update Onion and running into problems, just start fresh. You'll be able to restore all your old save games later. Step 3, update to the latest version of the Miyoo firmware. And when that's done, don't forget to remove the firmware image from the SD card. Step 4, do a fresh install of Onion OS, following the instructions on the GitHub page that I'll link in the description below. Step 5, add your old ROMs and BIOS files from your backup. Make sure to refresh your ROM caches if you're using the same ROM files that you had before. You just press select in the games menu and choose that option. That way it'll make sure that all your games are detected properly. Step 6, if you have save games from your old system, the easiest way to copy them over to the new system is to make one save file for one game in each system. This will create the folders for the new emulators on your new system, and then you can copy your old save files from your backup over to your new folders. Updating like this will obviously reset all your RetroArch settings and stuff, but honestly the new default settings are so well done that it's probably a good thing that you're starting fresh, because I'm actually super impressed at how well everything is set up right out of the gate. You'll also lose your save states because there's a good chance that your old states won't be compatible with the new default emulators, so just make sure you're using your cartridge saves. And hey, there's a chance that your old save states will work depending on the system, so if you're feeling ambitious and you like to tinker, then yeah, give that a go. So with all that out of the way, let's see how the new version of Onion OS works. Starting with the installation. When you power on the device with the Onion installer added, it'll start the installation automatically. It takes about 2 minutes. After that, we get a little quick start guide, and then we have our button layout guide, which is really well done. This is now unified across Onion, so all the emulators use the same hotkeys. The menu button now has a function that they're calling Game Switcher, which is really cool. I'll show you that in a bit. You can save and load your state with L2 and R2, access fast forward and rewind with L1 and R1, change your save slot with the D-pad, toggle the FPS display with the X button, and open the RetroArch menu with the select button. These are very logical, useful shortcuts. All the stuff you need and nothing you don't. Next, you'll be asked which systems you want to add to your games list. There's lots to choose from here. You can add them all if you want, but that'll just fill up your games menu with a bunch of systems you probably don't have ROMs for. I just added all the systems that I like. The classic retro systems, Babe, Neo Geo, all the Nintendo systems, Sega systems, Turbografx, PS1. You can change this later as well if you find there's a system that you don't need, or if you need to add a system, you can access this menu from the device at any time. After that, you'll be in Onion. If you're not familiar with Onion, it's pretty dang simple. You have your favorites, games, apps, and settings. Favorites and games are just your ROM files. Apps is extra stuff like themes and game timers and stuff. And settings is your system settings. The first thing that I wanted to do was switch the theme. So I went to the theme switcher in the apps section and selected my favorite theme, which is Onion Boy HD. Really cool retro pixel themed theme. It would be better if it was orange. Maybe I'll make a video where I show how to further customize the look and feel of this device. Where I'll make my own orange theme. Is that something you'd like to see? After that, I went into the settings to adjust the screen settings, since I'm updating the Miyoo firmware reset my screen. Apparently there's a wide range of screens used on this device, so it's a really good idea to just adjust the screen so that it looks good on your device. I also turned down the screen brightness so that it would look better on the video, by the way. I usually have that brightness at max though. Make sure you test a game after you adjust the brightness to make sure that it looks good. Now, let me tell you about the newest feature of Onion OS, which I love. Updating to the latest Onion was a pain in the buns, but it was totally worth it because of this one feature alone. It's called the Game Switcher. Watch this. As I'm playing, I'm going to tap that menu button, and what it's going to do is it's instantly going to save my state with a nice big screenshot. Now I can resume the game by pressing A, or exit the game by pressing B. And another option you have is instead of tapping menu, you can hold the menu button, and watch what happens. See that? It takes you right out of the game, and it actually saves your state there as well. So you can tap it to save your state and pause the game, or you can hold it to exit the game. But watch this. When I go back into the game, look at that. It picks up right where I left off, which is a feature that I absolutely love. It's one of the reasons I loved Mini UI. I know you could enable it in Onion before, but you had to enable it with a different mode, and it was a little finicky. Mine actually stopped working entirely for some reason, so it's really, really cool that they've implemented this system-wide. But that's not all. Watch this. I'm going to tap the menu button to save my state, and then I'm going to exit the game. There we go, save my state. Now I'll exit. And I'm going to pick a different game to play on a completely different system. And once again, I'm going to press the menu button to save my state and open the game switcher menu. But watch this. There we go, save my state with my screenshot, but when I use back and forth button, there's my Burger Time game. So not only does it give you the option to switch between your saved states for the game that you're playing, it also gives you the option to switch between all the save states for all the games that you've played recently. So this is really cool. If you have like 4 or 5 games on the go, like I tend to do, rather than having to save your game, exit the emulator, back to the menu, switch your system, go to the other game, open it, load your state, play for a while, then you want to switch back to your other game again, you gotta do all that stuff again, you can just jump right over to your other game from the game you're in without having to mess around with any menus at all. It does it all for you. Because why wouldn't it? Why wouldn't you just want to be able to see the last 5 games you played and be able to switch between them with a push of a button? Why wouldn't you want the device to save your save state when you exit without having to do any of that yourself? It just makes perfect sense. It's so simple and elegant. It's the main thing I loved about Mini UI. And they've incorporated it here on Onion OS by default across the board. And they've added some extra features that make it even better. And that's just freaking awesome. Oh, and one more quality of life feature that I love is this. Again, it was there before, but you had to toggle it, and now it's enabled by default. Check it out. The system will automatically save the game whenever you power it off, and then get right back into the game when you power it on. Watch this. Power off. There we go. The device is off. Now let's turn it back on, and yeah. Nice. So this way, if you're in the middle of a game, just hold that power button and it saves your state and powers down. Next time you turn it back on, it loads up your game automatically right where you left off. And of course, you can use the little menu button to save your state, exit your game, switch between your active games. It just makes so much sense. I love it. I love it. Alright, before we get to the games, I want to look through the apps and see what else is new in here. And yeah, in here there's a section called Tweaks.
Put your hands together for Tweak.
In here, under the startup section, this is another cool feature. You can have it automatically resume the last game you were playing when you shut down, like I showed you before. Or you could choose which application it starts with. So you could launch right into the game switcher if you want, or launch right into RetroArch, or right into the main menu, and the Start tab. What section do you want to start with? If you're always going to your games right at the start, why not launch right into your games? Or if there's only a handful of games that you play, launch in your favorites. And here's another feature that's great. Automatically save and exit when your battery gets low. Because fully draining your battery is bad for it. And if your battery dies while you're playing, then you won't get a chance to save your state and you'll lose your progress. This feature just makes sense, doesn't it? And over here, in the button shortcuts area, you could customize what the main menu button does. So by default, single press is your game switcher, holding it exits to the menu, double pressing it is your quick switcher to swap between your last played game. I personally am not going to bother changing these settings at all because I think they're perfect the way they are, but it's really cool that we get so many ways to customize how the device works. And over here in the user interface section, this is where you'll toggle those extra two menus, a recent games and the expert mode. Probably better just to leave those off since the game switcher kind of takes the place of the recents menu, and the new emulators, they work great by default, and I don't personally intend to mess around with extra emulators and stuff, but at least you can toggle those here if you actually want to use those. Oh, this is cool. You can adjust the fast forward rate. So holding the hotkey and pressing the right bumper will toggle fast forward, and you can change the speed. I'm going to leave this at unlimited, which will let the game speed ahead at its maximum FPS. I use the fast forward for skipping dialogue and cutscenes and stuff, so no reason I wouldn't want that at max personally. Oh, and look at this, you can swap the triggers. This is a system-wide setting, so it applies to the entire device. You can do this before in RetroArch, but having it as a system-wide setting makes way more sense, doesn't it? And this is also where you can find your search, which also appears in the games menu, I think. Let's try it out now. Let's see if we can find Mortal Kombat. There we go, and it organizes them into their games folders. So yeah, here is all the versions of Mortal Kombat that I have on this thing right now. That's cool. Also in here, in the apps menu, is where you can access RetroArch by itself. So you can adjust the settings in RetroArch itself without having any cores loaded. Actually, I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to change the RetroArch color theme. I made a guide of how to use and customize RetroArch on the Miyoo Mini. I found that doing stuff in RetroArch is not very straightforward. It's a little bit confusing about how to make your tweaks and save your settings, so that's why I made the guide, and I'll include a link to that in the description below. To change the color theme, I just go to the user interface section of the settings, down to the menu color theme, and choose my favorite theme, Groovebox Light. And then I need to back out to the main menu and save the current configuration so that it keeps this setting. And last but not least, you can find the quick guide here, which tells you the features of Onion and shows you the hotkeys in case you forget. Here's a problem that I encountered. My extras menu doesn't work. It's totally empty. I double checked the package manager, I looked around a bit online to see if I could find a reason why this wouldn't be working, and I couldn't find anything. It's just totally empty and I have no idea why. I might tinker some more to try to get the extras menu working properly, but honestly, I don't really care that much. I just thought I'd mention it here in case any of you guys have a similar issue, or even better, if you have a solution for me. If you do, please let me know in the comments and I'll be your best friend. Alrighty, with that out of the way, what I really want to do now is just play some games. I want to try a bunch of stuff from a bunch of systems, and I really want to see how it all works and how it looks right out of the box. I know you can customize this to your heart's content, but I have reason to believe that they've chosen pretty much perfect emulators and settings to make the games look great and work great, but we gotta see for ourselves, don't we? So let's start low and work our way up. Obviously, all your old stuff is going to work fine. You can play Atari 2600 games on anything. Seriously, freaking anything. But this is one of those systems that really shines when you play it on a nice screen. Something about those super flat pixel sprites and the bright neon colors, it really feels like a beautiful piece of retro nostalgia when you see it on a screen that looks good on its own, even with nice, simple graphics. I mean, this thing looks like a Game Boy, so we gotta test out some Game Boy. And obviously I gotta test Burger Time, my favorite Game Boy game, and one of my favorite games in general as well. I play a ton of this game. It's my go-to game for quick little 5-minute game sessions. Heck, I pulled it out and played it for a few minutes while I was writing this script. This sort of game is great on the Miyoo Mini because it's such a small and portable device that can live in your pocket. You can pull it out anytime you're bored, like when you're, I don't know, standing in line at the bank. Just pull out your little Game Boy and turn the volume all the way up and smash some Burger Time. And before you know it, everyone in the place will be cheering you on and telling you how cool you are. This happens to me all the freaking time, not gonna lie. Here's a game I never played before on the NES. This is called Galaxy 5000. It's not very fun, in my opinion, but I've said it before, and I'll say it again, why not? This is the best part of devices like this. Being able to fire up random old games that you never tried and see what they were like. Sometimes you'll find great games. I have a whole bunch of games that I discovered this way. And sometimes you'll find terrible games. And even those are fun to check out and laugh about how bad they were. I guess I should talk about the emulator settings, huh? If you haven't noticed by now, the screen size and aspect ratio and scaling, it's all been, like, perfect. The Onion team has pre-selected the best settings for each of these systems. They've used integer scaling when it makes sense so the games can nearly fill the screen. Otherwise, they've used a simple nearest neighbor scaling method. The aspect ratios are spot on. No stretched images. The screen on the Miyoo Mini is 640 by 480, which is a perfect ratio and dimensions for retro gaming. All your 4x3 systems will fill the screen perfectly, but those older retro systems like the NES and Turbografx 16 that use 8x7 ratio, they nearly fill the screen. And obviously you can enable scaling options to stretch it and fill the screen completely if you want to do that. Again, check my RetroArch guide if you need help figuring out how to do that and save your settings. You won't be playing any widescreen games on this thing, so pretty much every system will fill the screen nearly completely with minimal black bars. I usually prefer to stretch my games to fill the screen if it's pretty close to the native aspect ratio, but honestly the scaling options they've chosen here look so good, I'm not even gonna bother. Gameboy Advance plays with perfect 3x integer scaling and it looks absolutely perfect. No weird stretched or jaggy pixels. This device is a nearly perfect GBA device. I say nearly perfect because you will find the occasional game that doesn't run great. I always test Duke Nukem Advance, but my camera stopped recording when I filmed that one for some reason, so I don't have the footage. But Duke Nukem Advance had a few visual glitches. To be fair, it always has visual glitches or poor performance, that game, on pretty much every device that I tested on. I just want to let you know that you may come across the odd game that doesn't work but perfectly. But like 99.9% of the games are going to run problem-free, so I don't think you'll even notice, to be honest. The arcade systems also work great and look great on this system, and with the new features of being able to easily save your state and suspend the gameplay with the push of a button, I think playing some arcade games is a really good use of this device. If it lives in your pocket like mine does, because they're quick, action-packed, meant to entertain you for a minute or two. So you need to kill 4 minutes while you wait for your chocolate chip bagel to toast. Why not squeeze in a quick round of Windjammers? Now we're getting into the systems that have given us problems in the past, namely SNES and PS1. SNES works mostly fine on most of these sorts of devices for most games. Games like Shoplifter 3, this will run on pretty much anything. And it looks just so perfect on this little amazing screen. But there are harder to run games that do not work well on every device, like Star Fox. This game has a 3D engine that is very hard to emulate on lower end devices, but it's actually working just fine here, believe it or not. I know the gameplay looks choppy, but this is how it played on the original system. If you listen carefully, you can tell there's no audio stuttering or anything like that, so this is running at full speed. And here's another game that's been problematic on weaker hardware, Super Mario World Yoshi's Island. Something about this game just brings emulation hardware to its knees. But again, here, it's running absolutely perfectly. Better than it did on the original Miyoo Mini default firmware, actually. And better than the original Onion version. So if this game can run at full speed, I doubt you'll find anything from the 16-bit era that won't run problem-free. And that alone makes this update to Onion worth it, even if you already have an older version of Onion. I'm really glad that I have mine updated now that I've survived the gauntlet of actually doing the update. And now for the million-dollar question. What about PS1? Well, first, the bad news. It's not perfect. Playing the hardest to run PS1 game, Bloody Roar 2, and it's not quite running at full speed. It's like 50 FPS, and you can hear some audio stuttering. So it's not perfect, which is a bummer. But like I said, this is the hardest to emulate PS1 game, so there's a good chance that whatever other game you want to play will play at nearly full speed at least. As for what to do if it doesn't, you have two options. First, you can enable frame skip. Set that frame skip to 1, and you'll be able to play at 30 FPS and have no audio stuttering or anything, which is what I did here, and as you can see, it's plenty playable. Not quite as smooth feeling as it could be, but it's not terrible. However, I do have one more option for you. I discovered this after I filmed the first video. Check this out. If you open your RetroArch options using the menu and select, go down to the core options, then down to the GPU plugin, and enable the show interlaced video option. This will let the game run at full speed without any frame skip, but with interlacing. The downside is you do see some interlacing in the video, but it's not super noticeable. And if it lets you run those problematic games at full speed, I think that's a way better option than using frame skip. If you want this setting to be saved only for this game, you'll need to go back to that RetroArch menu, go down to the overrides, and select Save Game Overrides, which will save that setting just for this one specific game. And obviously do the same thing on any other games that don't run at full speed. Playing old DOS games on a portable emulation devices is a fun concept. There are a ton of old DOS games that I played back in the day that I'd love to check out here. I didn't bother installing any custom DOS games today. This video's gone on long enough. It comes with Commander Keen though, and it seems to work good. And we have the ports over here, and there's quite a few to choose from. Obviously, we've seen these old PC games and ports on devices like this for a long time. It's basically expected at this point, but it's actually really fun to play these old games on devices like this, and the ports are usually very well done. None of the ports that come pre-installed actually have the files you need, so here you see if I load up Quake, it just dumps me back to the menu. So obviously you'll need to download all those separately because they're not included. Either the free shareware versions or find your own way to get the WAD files and stuff. Like if you own the games on Steam, you can get them there. Anyways, I think I'm going to do a separate video specifically about DOS games and ports on this device because there's a lot of potential to play some amazing, really fun games, and it's a topic that doesn't really get a lot of coverage. Nobody seems to really do a deep dive into that topic, and I think it would be a fun video too. Is that something you'd find interesting? Let me know in the comments if you'd actually want to see a video like that, or if you don't really care about old DOS games for boomers like me. And, well, there you have it. I mean, it's not drastically different from previous versions of Onion OS. It doesn't make this thing feel like a whole different device or anything. If you liked Onion before, you'll love this update. If you didn't like Onion before, you might like it better now. If you preferred Mini UI, well, maybe it's time to give Onion another chance because the whole experience feels much more streamlined now. And the best features of Mini UI are now part of Onion by default. And the new features they added are really, really great. It really help you just get into your games quick, playing your games without having to tinker around and navigate the menus. The default settings they chose for the emulators are just freaking bang on. The scaling options and the emulator settings and everything, it's all just configured so well. I'm actually really impressed. There's very little that I felt I needed to mess around with, like tweaking and tinkering. I like adjusting things to make it perfect, and I didn't really need to do that here, which is saying a lot. So I guess it's pretty darn close to perfect at this point. It works great, and if you have a Miyoo Mini, you kind of owe it to yourself to install Onion OS because it really makes this device into something more than it is out of the box. And like I said, I think I'm going to do 2 more videos on this device. One looking at how to customize it with your own visuals. I have my heart set on having an orange interface and boot screen and stuff. And then another video specifically covering DOS games and all the ports that you can get. Because it's a topic that not many people are making videos about, and it's something that I'm really passionate about. Anything that lets me play good old Wolfenstein and Duke Nukem 3D, oh, that's so up my alley. Oh man, I played so much Duke Nukem 3D back in the day. You have no idea. Well, I hope you found this useful, or at least entertaining. Please let me know in the comments below. Do you have a Miyoo Mini? Have you made the jump to Onion OS? Or are you a Mini UI fan and refuse to go with anything as complicated as Onion OS? Or are you still on the fence about the Miyoo Mini? Do you have a cheaper device and are wondering if it's worth the extra expense for something like this? It definitely is, in my opinion, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos you'd like to see, please just let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, click the thumbs up button if you liked the video, or the thumbs down button if you didn't. Subscribe so you don't miss any of my videos. As always, I'm TechDweeb. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.